Today we are going to talk about the second wave of feminism. So let's take a trip back to the 50s, 60s, 70s and a bit of the 80s. Hello, it's 2015 and welcome back to Historyboobs. Yes, I know we haven't yet talked about the first wave of feminism, but there's no rule that you have to make it all chronologically. If you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about in terms of waves and feminism, you can always pause this video and go back and look at my video on the basics of the women's rights movement. I'll put links here somewhere and in the description box. Let's just recap where we come from in this. We say that the first wave ends in 1928 with UK giving their women the right to vote, and that the second wave starts in the 1960s. That indicates that nothing happens for about 30 years, but of course that's not so. In the 20s, people were very aware of these questions. The women's rights movement had been going on and had had a really strong political voice for decades. But in 1929, the world was thrown into economic depression and women's rights kind of didn't seem that important anymore. Then came World War II, and women now needed to fill the workplaces so that society could function, and they did. But when the war ended, most of the men came back and they wanted their jobs back. There was a boom both in marriages and in childbirth, and in 1945 there was a need for 5 million new low-cost homes in the US. And here enters William Levitt. Well, he didn't invent it all himself, but he's often credited as the father of the modern suburb. His family's company built simple one-family houses at a furious rate. In this suburban life, the modern traditional gender roles were cemented. The ones where the man were the breadwinner who brought home the bacon to his family of well-adjusted children and stay-at-home wife, the homemaker. And why do I call this modern traditional? Why just not call them traditional? Because they're not traditional. Women not working is not seen in any other time in history. As historian Stephanie Coons says, women did not only bring home the bacon, they also raised and slaughtered the pig and brought it to the market. But the suburban life with a woman as a homemaker was strongly promoted in magazines for young adults and in advertisements, and with the TV moving into more and more homes. Shows like Father Knows Best and Leave It to Beaver showed you how a truly decent family should function. Here are some of the ads that could be seen in the magazines. Many commercial rants about women's failure in the kitchen, with her emotionally sobbing since her entire life then is a failure. But with this wonderful machine, no one can fail, not even her. You know, when your wife is pregnant and persists on giving in to that revolting morning sickness, isn't it a bummer that she then will not cook you your breakfast? I mean, should you really have to starve just because your wife is pregnant? No, this medicine will have her up and fresh as a rose at whatever time you wish. Isn't it convenient that it's so easy to make your lady so happy? Just buy her some household machines and her life will be complete. But of course you will have to explain to her how they operate. Imagine the mess she could make if she used the machine wrongly. There actually were some comments to these pictures, and this is the best one. No. Just no. But as we all know, this kind of life didn't make everyone happier. Yes, women had, in the first wave of feminism, won battles on some of the inequalities, such as voting rights and property rights. But cleaning out that first layer of inequality just exposed the next dirty layer. There were some important events that laid the groundworks for the second waves to form. The French writer Simone de Beauvoir had in the 1940s pointed out that male-centered ideology was being accepted as a norm, which placed women as the second sex, as her book was called. Swedish Alva Myrdal started working with women's issues as early as in the 1930s. And in the 50s, she was the chairman of UNESCO's Social Science section, her main focus being on promoting social reforms needed to allow for individual liberty, especially for women, while also promoting childbearing. One woman, often credited to start the second wave, is Betty Friedan, with her book The Feminine Mystique that was published in 1963. But as we can see just from the two previous examples, she really wasn't the first. Nevertheless, The Feminine Mystique, when it came out, was a huge eye-opener for many a suburban housewife. With her book, she strongly objected to the mainstream media image of women, stating that placing women at home limited their possibilities and wasted their talent and potential. The perfect nuclear family was not reflecting happiness, and actually it was rather degrading for women. Friedan's book made many homemaking housewives understand why they were depressed. Their identities were always in relation to someone else. They could be someone's mother or someone's wife, but they were never a person on their own. We should remember, though, that the feminine mystique has been criticized for many things. Among other, it only addresses upper and middle class white women, working class women and women of other ethnicities. Ethnicities? Ethnicities? Rarely recognized themselves in her descriptions. They didn't have the choice to be a homemaker. They had work to do. But the second wave came to be about so much more than just frustrated housewives. It broadened the debate to a wide range of issues. Sexuality, family, the workplace, reproductive rights, real inequalities, both legal and cultural. Women won many battles in the work area. In the military, in the media, and in sports, more and more women were seen. Some of this probably wouldn't have been possible, or at least would have taken much longer time, if the women hadn't been able to control if and when to get pregnant. In 1961, the contraceptive pill was made available in America. Well, it had been available for menstrual disorders since 1957, but now you could get it for contraceptive purposes. And during the decade to follow that, the pill was introduced to most of the Western world. This also gave women a feeling that they, for the first time, had the right to make decisions about their own bodies, and that they shouldn't put up with domestic violence and marital rape. Marital rape had until then been a non-issue. It was commonly thought that once you had said "I do," it automatically meant "I will," forever and whenever, no matter if you wanted to have sex or not. The laws commonly describes rape as a man doing something sexually to a woman, not his wife, without their consent. And it's the "not his wife" part that's the problem. That's the line that needed to be taken out. In Australia, as in the US, the states and the territories legislated about this one by one. It started in the 1970s, but it wasn't finished until 1993. Here's a map of which countries still haven't legislated against marital rape. It's all the countries that are not red. England and Wales held on to the not his wife line until 1991. Germany until 1997. 97? That's not even 20 years ago. Sweden was one of the first, if not the first country to criminalize marital rape. That was in 1965. The second wave also challenged the objectification of the female body. In 1963, journalist Gloria Steinem gained widespread popularity among feminists after publishing a diary she kept while working undercover as a Playboy bunny waitress. Steinem accused the club for mistreating their waitresses in order to gain male customers, and that they exploited the Playboy bunnies as symbols of male chauvinism. By 1968, Steinem had become arguably the most influential person in the movement, and for the legalization of abortion and the need for childcare. If all adults in a household are to be working, you have to have functioning childcare. And that is very different from country to country. Most Western countries have some kind of tax-funded solutions for this, but some countries have not. And there, the childcare can become really expensive. And yes, I am looking at you, USA. With more and more women realizing that their lives hadn't turned out to be all they wanted it to be, the number of divorces increased quickly. And they continued to increase until the early 1980s, when it kind of just stopped, and actually have since then steadily declined. By the early 1980s, it was commonly thought that women now had met their goals and succeeded in changing social attitudes towards gender roles. But, you know, as earlier, when you clean out one layer of shit, new layers are exposed. With the legislations mostly in order, people now had to start looking at the culture to see why the legislations weren't enough. A strong voice in this, at least in Northern Europe, was Norwegian Berit Aas. She started to work on a new framework for the master suppression techniques. And that is what I will be talking about next week. I hope you learned something new today. See you soon, I hope. Bye!